Hello and welcome back to El Podo, the Primera Ref show, where we take you down to the third tier of Spanish football every weekend across all games, and we are entering the penultimate games of the season with so much still to play for as well. It's been an exciting weekend of football, and I'm once again joined by Liam Bambridge to talk me through all 20 games from Primera Ref this weekend. But as always, Liam, I'll ask, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Amazing, isn't it, really? I was looking over the weekend. I think it's my turn to pick the games to watch from Grupo Uno this week. And I was like, there literally isn't a game here on which nothing rides. 10 games, every single game has something riding. It doesn't mean every single team has got something to play for, but every single game has a team that needs something from that game. And that's quite remarkable with just 2 games to go, isn't it?
It is, it is. I know we've had a few more relegations in Grupo Dos and Grupo Uno, but the fact that we still don't have titles decided, playoffs decided, and still some relegation places decided too is a really good indicator of how brilliant this league is. But I suppose is um, basically the dream across Spain at the moment, because it's the same in the Spanish Segunda, it's the same in Primera. It's just Spanish football is mint, and the further down you go, it gets even better. We think, don't we? Um, just to start with the news, there was some weird, not quite news that came out on Friday, but an account on Twitter did say, called Grada B Pro, that there was going to be an announcement on Monday by Primera Federacion. Now, we live in an era of misinformation, Liam. We live in an era where people put things out there and the vacuum is soon filled up by the most gallant and the most preposterous rumours. However, in this case, the one that actually came out was quite an interesting talking point, and it was apparently that La Liga and Primera Federacion were going to announce that there was going to be a La Liga 3, a professional third tier, so to speak. Now, that didn't transpire to be the case. The actual news was a lot more in line with what we'd expect. It was a TV announcement deal for the playoffs. But ultimately, it gave us that conversation, didn't it, around the Liga 3? And a lot of people were talking about it, which is a great thing for the third tier of Spanish football, isn't it?
Yeah, I think overall good thing. Clearly, we live in a world, don't we, of artificial intelligence as well. So it's quite easy for somebody. I'm not quite sure who actually did, but somebody mocked up how they thought it might look, what the proposed announcement might be going to suggest in terms of the structure of the league, not just for La Liga 3. And we know, of course, that these two leagues, which were traditionally at war with each other, La Liga and the RFEF, are much more closely aligned nowadays. So it wasn't a preposterous suggestion that could happen. And as you say, the truth was somewhat more mundane. But I agree. I think it was good to hear people talking about it. And I do think there are some concerns still, although there's been a fairly recent restructure with Primera Federacion. I think there are some concerns still about the fact that some clubs are struggling with the way things are set up. Some of those 40 clubs, as we know, have struggled to pay their players, and there's not enough investment in this league, either from TV or anywhere else. So it's not a completely far-flung idea for me. It may yet happen, just not yet.
Yeah, and I always like to think with these kind of conversations, much like what's happened with a lot of previous stuff around super coppers and retro weekends, for example, there's never any smoke without a little bit of fire on this. So I think it's one that's not going to happen now, but certainly something maybe just to keep a pin in, because I agree with you, Liam. There is definitely a appetite, a thirst, and a possible need for a professionalised third tier. I had a bit of fun over on El Partido as well, imagining what that third tier would look like. So if you head over to the Substack there, you can read my thoughts. Liam, I didn't know if you had any other teams that maybe are left out there that you would definitely include in your third tier of Spanish football.
No, I think the one thing we're both clear about, and of course it's not going to happen, that's the thing that makes me fear most. The possibility of it is the inclusion of filiales, and we've at the moment gotten sort of watered down, haven't we, across the two groups. It's 5 or 6 of them out of 40. You can imagine that all of those would be viable options for a one league third tier, and then we're suddenly talking about 5 or 6 or maybe even more out of 20 teams, and suddenly the appeal of a third professional league starts to diminish significantly in my mind.
Yeah, I would agree that. Though it could have a potential knock on to the Spanish Segunda, maybe no B teams in the Spanish Segunda as well. And I think there is a unique nuance down in the Tercera Federacion and the Segunda Federacion this season, because I think Udi Logroñez, they obviously are in the playoffs at the moment to get back into Primera, but their B team or their second team won Tercera Federacion, but they can't actually get promoted yet until they find out what's happened in the playoffs, which is again is always a bit of a head case of a scenario, isn't it? When it comes down to those situations where obviously they can't be in the same league as each other. So that is the fallover of the filiales, as always. Speaking of which, we do have some results from the Segunda Federacion playoff semi-final first legs. I'm just going to ratchet through these, Liam, and you can speak about any that really take your eye. But first of all, Coria drew 0-0 with Deportiva Minera. Real Oviedo Bay grabbed a slender lead against Tudelano against 1-0. Royce Redis and Urense Ude finished 0-0. Heresidi and Ube Conquensa finished 1-1. Logroñez beat Getafe B 2-0. I know you definitely want to talk about that one. Utebo fell to a 2-1 defeat to Aguiles FC. Numancia lost at home to Poblense. Deportivo Alaves B grabbed a 2-1 win away at Real Jaén. Ude Sanz beat Alcayano away from home, and Atletico Baleares smashed Coruxo 3-0 away from the island. I'm going to assume there's one point there that you really want to make about one of those games, Liam.
Yeah, it's of course Ude Logroñez. They were playing Getafe Bay, as you said, I think, and Getafe Bay, or Getafe the club, said you can't bring away fans. Loads of away fans managed to get in anyway, and so particularly happy after that ridiculous ruling from Getafe that they lost the game 2-0 and now right up against it. And also, although I don't like filiales, I kind of want Ude Logroñez to get up now into Primera Federacion, because I feel rather sorry for their B team. I think they're unbeaten. They've won the league by a country mile. They're sitting there, and essentially the team, and this is a bizarre situation now as well, the team that finished second in the league have to go and play the playoffs in Tercera Federacion, and regardless, because we haven't yet found out if Ude Logroñez are promoted. And of course, if by any chance Ude Logroñez do make it up, then their B team will make it into Segunda Federacion. They'll be allowed to move up to Segunda Federacion. And of course, the team that's currently in the playoffs, the second place team, I think, Varela, then will stop playing in the playoffs. If they've been knocked out of the playoffs, it won't matter because they finished second in the league and they'll be automatically promoted. So, yeah, absolutely bizarre situation.
Yeah,
I mean, sorry, no, wait, yeah, if Logroñez don't get up, sorry, it's if Logroñez don't get promoted, isn't it, that the B team won't be allowed to do it, and therefore the second place team will be promoted instead. Quite extraordinary.
Yeah. It's very weird. It's very strange, but like I say, something we've become used to in Spanish football, I suppose, rightly or wrongly. But yes, we will definitely keep you an eye on those games next weekend as well, all on next Saturday and Sunday, as per usual for the second legs, and then obviously who will be in the finals to come up to Primera Federacion. We're really excited to see who's going to be joining us. To speak about the teams we currently have with us, some of them maybe not for too much longer, Liam, should we start with some Grupo Uno games to talk about?
Yeah, Baracaldo to Merida 0. Quite a lot to talk about, perhaps not on the pitch in this game as well. It's this old topic, Nick, of the Diez del Club. And just to explain what that is for those of you who don't know, it essentially means that the clubs reserve the right at least once during the season to ask their season ticket holders to pay a bit more for one game. And it's a really unpopular thing that clubs do. We've seen a lot of backlash against it. And we saw one in this game. Less than 1,500 people attended this game. This is a massive game for the home side, pushing to try and get in the playoffs, and the attendance was appalling. And it was all about the fact that a lot of fans were really unhappy about being asked to pay extra on top of the season ticket that they bought at the start of the season. What's your view on this?
I don't like it. I believe we had something similar not too long ago with Eldense as well, and it always seems to be in the monumental parts of the season that these club days appear. They're never at the start of the season when there's nothing to play for, is there? So it's a bit of an oxymoron for me because, undoubtedly, when you need your fans the most, by doing one of these days, you risk the chance of not having them behind you when you really need them. So, yeah, I'm not a massive fan. They pay the hard-earned money. We're in a cost of living crisis, and Spain is not immune to that. So asking fans to pay more at a time, when you need them most is a bit weird to me.
Yeah, I think the only thing was, I think Imanol that I sort of said afterwards, the players deserve better, and I get that the players didn't make the decision to charge extra. I've had a few conversations with Baracaldo fans about this, and I am very torn on it, because I do think as English citizens we tend to complain a lot, and then we just go ahead and pay or go ahead and do it, regardless. And I don't like that either. But I do think the situation, I do feel sorry for the players and the coach. Have had a brilliant season. They haven't got a lot of money at Baracaldo. It's one of the lowest budgets in Grupo or not. Would you not just, however unhappy you were, would you not just fork out the 10 or 15 euros and get down there and support your team? I think I probably would have done in that situation. But no criticism of fans who didn't. They just felt obviously that the club were taking the mickey, and they were going to vote with their feet.
Yeah, exactly. It's strange how, year on year it seems so unpopular, yet year on year it never seems to disappear. So, it's one of those where, consistently with Spanish football, the eye is turned away from that and it's just ignored. But, hopefully they'll be back in the droves and potentially in for a playoff campaign, Liam, because this win here really keeps Baracaldo's hopes of finishing in a playoff spot, really alive here. And the first half was really entertaining as well. So, like I say, those fans unfortunately missed a great game of football. Both sides trading blows. Obviously, Merida are, unlikely to make the playoffs now. I think after this weekend now, it's mathematically impossible for them to do so. However, they did really attack well in this game. But it was the home side who took the lead after 22 minutes. A corner sent lobbed to the back post, and it was Sevin Marino there who really fought hard to get onto the end of this ball, like really, tussled with the Merida defender to get it back into the box. He manages to do so, gets the ball across the face of goal, and who's waiting there? It is Marca Larana to tap in from the about 4 yards, to be fair. A really great opening goal, but I tell you what, sometimes the assist is often better than the goal, and this is one of those scenarios, isn't it?
Yeah, brilliant for Molino. A looping header, isn't it? As you say, Arana just has the simplest job to head it home at what became, I suppose, the far post or the near post. I'm not sure which way you look at it, where we eventually came from. Yeah, Arana's an interesting one, isn't he? I think he's on loan from Eibar. There were a couple of loanees there at Baracaldo from Eibar, and I was talking to an Eibar fan the other day about whether he would be likely to get a look in, perhaps, if he were to go back to Eibar this summer, rather than stay permanently at Baracaldo. And of course, as you rightly said, Baracaldo might yet be playing Eibar next season the way things are going. Equally, they might not be, because Eibar might be in La Liga. So a long way to go before we know about Arana's future. But certainly, he's impressed me at the heart of the Baracaldo defence. I do think in this first half, Nick, we talked a few weeks ago, I think, about, or maybe it was with Tom, about Halson perhaps being a little bit too honest, and I do think he's fouled in the box in this first half, and I do think Merida, he didn't really make much of it. He looked a little bit disappointed at best. He didn't really fling himself on the ground or anything. I thought it was a penalty. It wasn't given, but I thought Merida were a bit unfortunate with that one. But yeah, there was a more clear-cut penalty perhaps in the second half, wasn't there?
Yeah, there really was. There was those, like I say, two tame ones. But I do agree with you. I think sometimes he is a bit innocent when it comes to making those appeals, compared to others who really like to gesticulate and get their opinion across there. Up until the 72nd minute, it's just when the referee, has waived those appeals. There is basically an appeal for handball in the box, wasn't it? And the referee is then summoned over to the FES screen, because initially he didn't give the penalty. He's then changed his mind, which is such a rare thing for FES as well with refs this season, I find. So for him to do that was quite unique, and he gave the penalty to Baracaldo, which was emphatically dispatched by Futbol. I never quite know if I get that name right or not, Liam, to be fair.
I think he's a Udobra, but it's not a very easy name to pronounce, is it? It doesn't feel very easy to pronounce, even if you pronounce Spanish, without too many difficulties. So yeah, I can't level too much blame at you for that.
A great penalty, though, isn't it? To be fair.
Yeah, he takes a good penalty, doesn't he, Udobra? Yeah, he's a good player for them as well. And they've got a really decent squad of players, really. And as I say, given they've got one of the lowest budgets in this particular Grupo, I think they've done tremendously well to get to where they have.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree on that one. And even with the loss of Sam Bartolome as well in January to Albacete, again, he was a very key player for them. But it's good to see some of the players who've stepped up, in their stead. Merida did rally ever so slightly, but I think eventually sort of the steam just came out of them, and they just resigned themselves to the fact they're going to be playing at this level again next year. It means that they can't qualify for the playoffs now, but they also can't get relegated, which I suppose is good news from their perspective. But for Baracaldo, just 2 points off Real Madrid Castilla now in the playoffs, 3 points off Pontevedra, two options there that they can try and hunt down in the final two games. It is, like you say, really good to see them in the mix. And, they're a club that, didn't quite come close last season, but they were still entertaining to watch. They won the league at an absolute canter the year before. Like you say, they'd be an interesting club for Segunda, wouldn't they, Liam, in terms of, Basque representation and also just like a fascinating place to play football.
Yeah, I think they struggle a bit, don't they? Because they are so close to Athletic Club, and I think they need to find a few more people treating them as their second team and going there a bit more. I mean, I think, as we've said, the attendance this weekend was really, really disappointing, but they haven't really, for me, had the sort of attendance that they deserve all season, if I'm honest. And I'd like to see a few more people, getting behind them. But if they were to get promoted, maybe that would have a big impact on them. Maybe it's a case of just getting a little bit higher up the pyramid, and then suddenly people will start to take a bit more notice of them.
Yes, absolutely. Hopefully so. And like I said, it'd be interesting to see how they take these final two games as they chase down a playoff spot, back down to the bottom end of Grupo Uno, which has been an absolute basket case this weekend, Liam, in terms of results. One of them, which we kind of forecast last weekend, it was Depo Guadalajara against Arenteiro, the home side running out 2-0, which gives them a huge lifeline in terms of staying in this division as they beat the already relegated Arenteiro at the Pedro Escartin. It was a pretty cloudy day near the capital. However, the heavens parted open for some sunshine, Liam, and as it did, almost as if it was an act of God, Deportivo Guadalajara take the lead. A brilliant finish from Quique Cadete to grab his first goal in purple. This was a really neat and tidy finish, this wasn't it?
Yeah, he's a defender, isn't he, as well? And he's a strong and powerful defender, but I wouldn't have imagined he'd ever score a goal like this. He was given plenty of time. I did notice that the Arenteiro bench, I think, only had 4 players on it, or maybe 5. I think probably they're already cost-cutting, with a view to beginning to save money that they don't need to spend now they're down. I didn't see any sign of Mingo this weekend, and I think a few others probably stayed at home, and that's probably on club orders. But yeah, it was a great finish from Cadete. You're right about the weather. We've been there a number of times to Guadalajara. There's obviously at least half the stadium has absolutely no cover at all, and we had some fairly spectacular rain in this one, and thunder and lightning, and then that was kind of pretty much the par for the course, wasn't it? A number of grounds this weekend in Spain. Quite unusual for May in Spain.
Yeah, it really, really was. And I would say that Arenteiro tried to take advantage of the almost pool-like facilities as the downpour came down, as they were given a penalty in the first half, a sort of a swan dive into the box, so to speak. However, it was immediately asked to be checked by FES. You could actually see, the Depor defenders shouting to the bench to say, "You need to check this. This is bollocks." And it was rightly overturned, and the penalty wasn't given. Then we go down to the other end of the pitch just before half time. There's again. The rain has now stopped. The heavens have opened. Sunshine is on Depor. Like I say, it's almost biblical, this win. A foul on Alex Nexes in the box I think it was the 47th minute. Coolly dispatched away by Pablo Munoz from the penalty spot. 2-0 to Depo Guadalajara. Basically a huge win, and the game pretty much done in 45 minutes, if I'm honest, Liam.
Yeah, pretty much petered out after that. I do wonder about defenders sometimes. He's absolutely protesting his innocence. I think it's Alex Bali. It's a clear penalty. He clearly catches him, and he's fuming about it. I know he's fuming about his own stupidity, but a lovely finish from Pablo Munoz. I watched the second half, but I might as well not have bothered. Understandably, Arenteiro didn't have enough to get back into it, and then Deportivo Guadalajara had to win the game, so very little happened, and that win moves them on to 39 points, which looked great at the time. Until a couple of other results went somewhat surprisingly. They looked like they were going to stay outside the relegation zone at the end of this jornada, but then especially one team caused a bit of a surprise. They've got 2 filiales to finish off with, haven't they? Bilbao Athletic this weekend up in their Fama, and then they finish at home to Real Madrid Castilla. What do you reckon their chances are of surviving?
I think they need to get at least one win to give them a chance. In terms of, Bilbao Athletic, they can't get relegated now, so I think maybe they'll take their foot off the gas a little bit, and they'll have an easier week. Obviously, they've just been turned over by Pontevedra as well. Let's not forget. So already kind of like on the beach, as they say. So I think that's a great opportunity for them to get 3 points. Real Madrid, Castilla, I suppose it depends on where they are coming into the final jornada. If they've still got a chance of either remaining in the playoffs or being just outside the playoffs, given what happens next weekend, then that's a much more difficult request. However, as we've seen this weekend, a team in the relegation zones can actually, give them a bit of a thumping. So who knows? Depor Guadalajara could finish the season with back-to-back wins, 3 wins on the bounce to keep them in Primera. So which, I think for the bias in me, I kind of hope they do it. To be fair, that's no discredit to anybody else, but I would like to see Depor Guadalajara stay in this league. If not, just to save face on the fact I had them finish in the playoffs, Liam. Which, if we think to way back when.
Yeah, I think obviously I'd love them to stay up. I think that last game at home to Real Madrid Castilla is potentially a real problem because of the fact that I think Real Madrid Castilla will probably need something from that game to get into the top five. So that would be a concern to me. I think they have to go to Anafama and play Bilbao Athletic this weekend. And as you say, a game that Bilbao Athletic don't have anything riding on it really. It's a match they have to win for me if they want to have any chance of staying up.
Yes, absolutely. And we'll definitely watch that game with interest next weekend. One filial that does have a lot to play for and seemingly just won't bugger off. Osasuna Promesas are a club that just won't go away, seemingly dead and buried at the beginning of the year. They are giving themselves a real shot at survival, very similar to what they did last season as well, where they survived on the last jornada of the season as well. And they look, at the moment, good for potentially repeating that, Liam. And, in this game, it's always difficult to engage, how low ebb a game can be when they're playing at Osasuna's training ground. You always get that sense that it's really quiet. It must be really difficult to get motivated. However, controversy seemed to reign supreme in this game, didn't they? And it started with that opening goal, Liam. I don't know if you saw this. I'm going to say the build-up to the penalty. This is absolutely ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's comical. I think it's Unai Santos, isn't it? He's trying to get to the ball in the box and just can't get there. I mean, flings himself on the floor. It's laughable. How on earth the referee gives a penalty for that? I have absolutely no idea whatsoever. Extraordinary decision. And we know, don't we, that since the end of this game, Talavera have lodged an official complaint. And we've seen decisions like this given. Let's not beat about the bush here. This isn't the first time that pretty much a non-penalty has been given for a team, but this is one of the worst examples I think I've seen all season.
It is. And I'd have to argue that Unai Santos was the one that was committing the foul to begin with. He's all over the Talavera defender, isn't he? And obviously trying to get onto the end of the cross that's coming in from wide. And then, like you say, just chucks himself onto the floor. And, the fact that this has been looked back on FBS by the referee, I can see it sat in my, back bedroom in Elswick in Lancashire. He's sat, 4 inches from away from the screen. He must see the same thing that we're seeing, which is this is a blatant dive. So again, absolutely no idea why he decided to give it. However, he did. Danny Gonzalez converts from the penalty spot, but you can really see why Talavera are aggrieved by this. And then basically in the second half, both sides sort of like just trade pop shots, I find. There's a couple of opportunities where they've all hit the bar, both Talavera and Osasuna Promesas in search of that. However, we don't actually get our next real bit of action up until the 85th minute, and it's an absolute corker, Liam. I don't know if you've seen this goal. A brilliant strike from Alvaro Lopez from distance that just ripples the back of the net. And because it's so quiet at this training ground, you can actually hear the ball as it makes that soft, gentle noise as it ripples the back of the goal, as I say. This was an absolutely brilliant strike, wasn't it?
Yeah, and in the 85th minute, you'd be thinking we've done a job here. We've gone away from home, difficult, prospects with a team that are, as you say, refusing to give up and trying to save themselves. And we've gone one down in rather controversial circumstances, and we've got back on level terms. And brilliant. We come away from this place with a point, but then we have another for me, very questionable incident, which leads to a winner for the home side.
It is. It's a scramble, isn't it, in the final moments of the game at the edge of the Talavera box. Unai Santos, involved once again. Tactics clearly to send the two centre backs up to go and cause some chaos. And there's a lot of swinging of legs. First of all, that I didn't like, Liam. I thought, on a different day, you could have seen a foul given for the intensity of which those blows were being gifted. But then this kick up from the ball where Espero looks to have handled it. Now, I've watched it back a couple of times. On one of them, I thought, maybe that's underneath his arm, sort of like into his armpit. Maybe that's just a bit tight. Other ones I've looked back at it and gone, that definitely hits his arm. I don't know where you fall on this, Liam. I'm kind of leaning towards the latter, to be honest.
Yeah, I think it's handball. It is a tight one. But again, this is what we're supposed to have a FVS for. I wouldn't have wanted to give it in real time from the referee's position. But certainly, I think if you're looking back at it on FVS, you have to conclude that it's hit his arm. And so, yeah, very unfortunate for a second time here. Lovely finish from Andy Yoldi, who, let's not forget, has got Segundo experience with Cordoba. So really, again, one would argue, what on earth are you doing playing at this level? But yeah, it was a beautiful finish from him. Nothing to take away from his goal that won it. But yeah, I think it should have been disallowed. And of course, Talavera go from having a crucial point, which would have helped their bid to try and stay in division. Of course, it also means that Osasuna Promesas, who were going to get no nearer to them, are now 3 points closer to them. So it's a massive moment in their season and a big break, I think, for the home side.
Yeah, it really drags Talavera down into the mire, who started this weekend with a good chance of finishing outside of the bottom five, but have been really pulled back into it, level on points with Orense as well now, I believe. Which shows how tight it is down there at the bottom of Grupo Uno. I can definitely see, Liam, this going to the final match day week, sort of similar to what we saw in Grupo Dos last season, where it could all change in the final minutes of a game. I don't think we'll know who's actually going down from this division until the very, very end of match day 38. Let's go talk about some Grupo Dos games now, though, because this was the league of goals this weekend. There are so many goals scored, some emphatic games, and we've actually picked two of them we recommend you if you watch, which is, really, really nice for us thing to do. The first one was on Friday night, Atletico Madrileño against Sabadell, two teams within a shout of the title, very much in the fight for the top spot. And it was a crazy game between these two sides, Liam, wasn't it? And one people definitely should go back and watch here, even though it does contain a filial.
Yeah, even though it contains a filial winning as well, which is never great, is it? But yeah, I mean, I think what we can say about this, it's always through gritted teeth when it comes to filiales, but Atletico Madrileño going forward are a tremendous side to watch. They do play some lovely football. I don't really understand. Clearly, there'll be a strategy here. I'm not really sure why Arnau hasn't had more of a look at the first team this season than he has, which I think he's had almost no look at the first team, if I'm honest.
Oh, no.
He scored over 20 goals in this league. He looks, a class apart, and yet there have been other players who've been given their chance, and he hasn't really. Maybe it's part of the strategy. Maybe he'll do what he has had happen to a few of his teammates in previous years. They go out on loan, maybe to a top flight team in Switzerland, like I think Omajano's done, for instance, from Atletico Madrid. I'm not sure what the strategy is, but ultimately he is brilliant. Luque was back for this one as well, wasn't he? I noticed that. But this is one of the things that annoys me, Nick, is that Luque was involved, I think, with the first team when Atletico Madrid travelled to Torremolinos, and therefore only came on for the last half an hour of that game and was presumably a bit weary because he'd been involved with the first team, I think, if not the day before, no more than 48 hours before. And then in this game he starts because it's more important, obviously. And Torremolinos fighting to stay in the division, and Sabadell fighting to win the league. What's the difference? You can't be picking and choosing who you're going to play your best team against, and it goes right to the heart of what I hate about filiales.
Yeah, no, 100% agree on that. Like you say, it seems to be that, the fact that, we've seen teams drop players from their first teams into this league as well, which just seems absolutely daft considering that, like I say, these are very capable football players, and if you want them to get that experience and want them to develop faster, why not send them out on loan? As you said, we've seen that happen with Raquelme, for example, to Mirandes a few years ago. Now he's absolutely thriving for Real Betis, if I remember rightly. It is, a good model. So, is, giving Sabadell somewhat of a bit of a slapping really worth their time? I'm not too sure. However, they did take the lead in this game. Aranautis involved once again. Up to 23 goals this season as well now, Liam, which is, like you say, just really impressive numbers for somebody who should definitely be getting a look in to Simeone's side. It was almost 2-0 by half time, but a 4-on-2 counter-attack couldn't be finished. Ika Luque, who we just waxed lyrical over a little bit, couldn't quite finish his shot and ended up shooting it wide. And then Sabadell were back in the game just after half-time as Joel Priego, who was having a brilliant season for Sabadell, scored the equaliser on the 51st minute, but it didn't last long, did it?
No, I mean, Llorente tucks it away in the corner. He's a class player as well, isn't he, for this level? Then Ferran Costa got sent off, not sure why, unhappy about something. Yeah, I mean, Sabadell, as I say, have been so good defensively this season, and they got picked off in this game. Not almost at will, but certainly much more regular than we've seen any other team do. And I think Frawley had one of his less impressive nights, although he didn't get much protection in front of him. I thought Atletico Madrid were tremendous going forward. I have to be honest and say I thought overall 4-3 probably flattered Sabadell, but they missed a penalty, didn't they? A busy moment for Esquivel, who gave it away and then saved it. He nearly saved the second penalty as well that Kostia scored. But yeah, 4-3, 2 goals right at the end. I think, as I say, I think that probably flattered Sabadell overall. I thought Atletico Madrid were, unfortunately, from my perspective, much the better side.
Yes, absolutely. And with that win, lifts them back within a point of Sabadell, but also with their results elsewhere, with Eldense slipping to a draw at Sevilla Atletico, means that they are only 2 points off top now. So we've got only 2 points separating the top three, which is going to make for a very interesting final 2 games of the weekend, especially, Liam, as I'm sure we'll mention later, Atletico Madrileño face Eldense this weekend. So they could be kings of their own destiny at the moment, but we'll definitely keep an eye on that one. Going to the all-playoff game that we have at the moment, Europa against Villarreal B, I must say, an absolutely brilliant atmosphere at the Estadio Candrago, really looking to get their fans and team over the line, despite the fact that they're playing at Athletics track. However, it didn't faze Villarreal B, and they were 1-0 up after just 2 minutes in this game, weren't they, Liam?
Yeah, I mean, I thought this was probably the best game, one of the best games I've seen in Primera Federacion all season. It was absolutely tremendous. The sun was shining as well, one of the few games where the weather was nice this weekend. It was amazing. I thought Villarreal B should have blown them away in the first half. They were 2 up, to be fair. I mean, they would say that was a comfortable lead, I suppose, but they were so much better than Europa, and I could only see one team winning this game. And then crucially, right on the stroke of half time, the first of the 2 goles Olímpicos, which is incredible, isn't it? A goal Olímpico, for those who are not sure, is when you score direct from the corner, literally an Olympic goal. In memory, I think of a very famous goal scored in the Olympics from a corner. Escoruela scores this one from a corner, and suddenly the whole game changes, isn't it? I think it wouldn't have been an exaggeration to say that Villarreal could have had 4 or 5 in that first half, and yet they go in at half time after this spectacular goal from a corner right on the stroke of half time, and they're only winning 2-1. It completely changes the whole kind of trajectory of the game, doesn't it, really, in terms of Europa suddenly having hope after being completely outplayed for 44 minutes.
Yeah, it really was. And what I found about that first half as well is that Europa obviously going to try and get back into the game, leave themselves time after time wide open for counter-attacks and, a lot of space in and behind the defence. However, this goal from the corner, scored exactly at the right time. You always want to score just before half-time, don't you? An absolutely brilliant finish. And then in the second half, I really think they picked up where they left off. They really went for the neck of Villarreal B in this one, and they were rewarded with an equaliser not long after. If there is any player in this division you want to be stood point blank range 4 yards from the goalkeeper, it's an absolute beanpole that is Oscar Vacas. He latches onto his header and bullets it past the Villarreal B goalkeeper. And then you've got to think, Liam, at this point it's in Europa's hands. They've got a good opportunity to really cement their playoff place here. But sometimes with these filiales, they're so tricksy, aren't they? And you can tell that they work on this kind of stuff in the training ground. Some really brilliant 1-2 touch football, passing through, just cutting through Villarreal, Europa like butter. And it's a brilliant finish from Nusa Al-Himel to find a pocket space and get his shot away. And it's a bit of a surprise lead for the away side, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, as you say, would expect Europa to push on there at 2-2 and really go for the jugular. They were certainly on top at that point, I thought, and yet Villarreal came back strongly. It was just a tremendous game. Villarreal go 3-2 up. Jordi Cannon was a good chance. It doesn't take it. Villarreal hit the post. And then you get another goal Olimpico. I mean, it's rare enough to see one goal direct from a corner in a game. There's two in this game. This time by Gailan, another superb piece of execution. I think goalkeepers always get stick for this, don't they? But having seen one a couple of weeks ago at a lower level than this, actually in Tercera Federacion, having seen it live, actually, right next to the goal, it really is quite a difficult thing to stop. If you get it right from the corner, it's not a gimme that the keeper should save it. And both of these, even though I wasn't in the stadium, were a tremendous piece of execution rather than goalkeeping errors. And then, of course, we have right at the very end a penalty in the 95th minute, and Jordi Cannon steps up, and I think we were all surprised by the outcome of this one.
Yeah, rare off day for Jordi Cannon, I would find, especially after, say, kind of his hesitation fluffed his lines earlier on. But usually you would trust him from 12 yards to score what, would be a winning goal, a 4-3 win this could have been. But he goes down to the keeper's right. It's easily matched by the Villarreal B keeper. And like you say, he's put his head in his hands, and shortly after the referee blows her final whistle. So again, for me, a definite case of 2 points shot for Europa. This is a result that neither side probably wanted, because it really opens the door to those two sides just outside of the playoffs chasing them down. Again, Liam, would you have liked to have seen one over the other here? I think obviously we would like to have seen Europa get all 3 points to really put Villarreal Bay in danger. But here, it kind of leaves them both open to jeopardy, doesn't it?
It does a bit, and of course we know which team we'd rather be open to jeopardy. But with all the fairness in the world that I can speak about a filial, it would have been really, really harsh on Villarreal B if they'd lost this game. They were quite tremendous for long periods of it, and I think a draw was the very least they deserved from it. So yeah, it's not a good result for either of them, because of course Cartagena and Algeciras both won, so that puts the pressure on both of them in those final two playoff places. But overall, as a spectacle, it was a quite fantastic game. One game that wasn't a fantastic spectacle, but did have a fantastic result from my perspective, with my Tarazona tinted glasses on, was Tarazona 2, Gimnàstica Tarragona 0. And of course, the first goal scorer was one that met with my approval as well.
Yes, friend of the podcast is a term that we like to throw around here often, but this one generally is. And it's an absolutely massive result, really, isn't it, Liam? In terms of, it's a long way to potentially keeping Tarazona in this league, but also condemning Nastic to a descension down to Segunda Federacion, which, for a team that have been involved in the playoffs, I think, in the last 4 out of 5 years, for them to be in this position is really, really, really worrying and a massive backward step. But if you're a Tarazona fan, you don't care, do you? And after 7 minutes, Kubila steps up a really deep cross here, and he just sort of stretches his neck to get onto the end of it, and it's a really good finish. And they've got the lead after 7 minutes, and from a Tarazona perspective, they don't often surrender a lead at home, do they?
No, they were very gutsy, as they always are. As you say, if they get in front at home, they're very, very hard to peg back. I thought Nastic tried, but really very, very little attacking output from them. They had plenty of the ball, plenty of pressure, but the execution of final third was appalling. I think Baselga came off the bench. I mean, again, that shows how far his star has fallen, that he's not even starting games. So unless he's got an injury, that seems bizarre to me in a game of this magnitude. He's a proven goal scorer, and he missed his one good chance. So perhaps he is in a bad place, because he really should have stuck that away. But overall, yeah, Tarazona resolute, hard to break down, as we knew they would be, and eventually settled it right at the end in added time with a finish from Busi, who'd gone down with cramp about 5 minutes earlier, and still managed to find the energy to get into the box and go around the keeper and tuck it away. So yeah, Nastic fall into the relegation zone, and a massive win for Tarazona. Other results mean that they've still got a long way to go, and their last two, which we might talk about later, are real tough games for different reasons. But yeah, Nastic certainly will need to win at least one, and probably both of the last two games if they're going to stay up.
Yeah, I think the big part of them scoring that 93rd minute goal is what it does to the head-to-head for this one, because there's only 2 points of a lead between both of them, and effectively, if Tarazona can get a draw in the next game, it pretty much condemns Nastic down to, they have to win as well. But ultimately, on the head-to-head, Tarazona have the advantage now, because I think it was the previous fixture was 2-0 to Nastic to Tarragona earlier in the season. This has now been 2-1, which, if I'm right in saying, Liam, that means that Tarazona have the advantage on the goals.
This was 2-0, wasn't it? So I'm not sure overall where the head-to-head is. What I would say, though, is that Tarazona have to go to Betis Deportivo this weekend, and then they play at home to Sabadell. So, Betis Deportivo have kept their hopes alive of staying up, and Tarazona's away form's not great, and then they have to play Sabadell in the last game of the season, which we would think that Sabadell might well still be in with a chance of winning the league and going up automatically. So, yeah, there's a long way to go for Tarazona still, particularly because of that Betis Deportivo result this weekend. But they've given themselves a great chance, whereas Nastic, they play Europa next, who obviously, as we know, also desperately need the points. And if they don't get anything out of that, the last game away at Hercules might be immaterial. Hercules nothing to play for, but it might be too late to save themselves in that last game if they don't get a good result this weekend.
Yes, definitely. I've just checked in the background. It was 2-1 earlier in the season, beg your pardon. So I think in the way it works in my simple headline, that means it's 3-2 overall to Tarazona if you put both results together, isn't it? So, yes,
so they have got ahead to right.
Yeah, worrying times for Nasty to Tarragona. Let's have a little look around the rest of the group, starting with Grupo Uno. Despite being announced champions the week before, Liam, Tenerife slipped to a surprise defeat, only their fifth one of the season, as they lost 2-1 to Unionistas in Salamanca, with Victor Olmedo on the score sheet. Like I said, Unionistas probably now just out of it, can't make the playoffs. However, eyes are already turning to their squad with some absolute heroes in their team this year. One of your favourites as well, Liam, noted today that he might be of interest to Racing Club de Ferrol in the summer. I think it's Juan Hay, isn't it?
Yeah, I think Juan Hay will get a lot of interest, won't he? He's been absolutely magnificent for Unionistas. He was brilliant, of course, for Yeclano Deportivo. I think Munir, who's also ex-Yeclano Deportivo, scored the first goal in this game. So a good a 1-2 ex-Yeclano Deportivo combo. And yeah, Juan Hay is obviously the third of those ex-Yeclano Deportivo players there. And he is a tremendous player, and I'm sure he will stay at least in Primera Federacion if he doesn't go higher. And it'll be tough, given the budget constraints at Unionistas, for them to keep him with the season he's had. I think Unionistas are just about still in the playoff picture, but I'd be surprised if they make it from where they are, as you say. Pontevedra in a much better position, though.
They really are, and they really strengthened their claim onto that playoff spot this week, and with an absolute dismantling of Bilbao Athletic, 4-0, with goals coming from all over the pitch as well, Liam, for Ruben Dominguez's men. And good news for them as well is that Real Madrid Castilla slipped to a surprise yet brilliant defeat here, losing 4-1 to Cacereño at the Estadio Príncipe Felipe. And that really dents the Los Blancos B's hopes of finishing in the playoffs, and really puts them in the crosshairs of Baracaldo and of Ponferradina as well. On Sunday, both Celta Fortuna and Zamora responded in kind, as they both delivered big wins as well. Zamora winning 3-1 away at Lugo to make it 5 wins in a row for Astacano's man, as they secured their playoff spot, which is a great, turnaround for Oscar Cano as well. When he first came in, we had our reservations, and Zamora were in a bit of a low ebb, and we were thinking, was this a really good idea? But he's paid them in, dividends, hasn't he, in terms of this, and they're the informed side coming into the playoffs. And Celta Fortuna, despite winning 4-2 in the Galician derby, beating Orense 4-2, that keeps them placed second, but I'd be surprised if Zamora don't eclipse them by the end of the season. It creates a bit of a situation where we might have the two filiales finishing sort of sandwiched in the middle, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when it comes to the playoffs, isn't it? They play great teams from the other group. So I'm kind of hoping that Celta Fortuna get overtaken by Zamora and that they finish third. And I think Villarreal, despite this draw this weekend, I'd probably quite like to finish fourth in Grupo Dos. So that would mean those two filiales playing each other. It would mean that one of them certainly wouldn't make it into the final, which would do me just fine. But yeah, Zamora, fair play to Oscar Cano, as you say, came to Zamora with a not very good reputation in recent seasons, because he's had that disastrous spell at Tenerife, and I think there were other coaching jobs that hadn't worked out, and he's done exactly what they've asked of him, which is get them in the playoffs, and we'll see where they go from here. And we mentioned obviously Baracaldo's win earlier on. We've also seen Ponferradina win this weekend. So whilst Zamora are safe in the playoffs, and so are Celta Fortuna, behind them there's still a lot to be decided, isn't there?
Yeah, there really is. It means that as we come into the final 2 match days, Tenerife stay top despite the defeat. Celta Fortuna stay second, Zamora third, Pontevedra are fourth. Real Madrid Castilla dropped to fifth, just 2 points ahead of Ponferradina and Baracaldo now in sixth and seventh, respectively. Down at the bottom of Grupo 1, Liam, what is happening in the maddest relegation zone in Spain?
Yeah, I mean, Alan we know are down, but that's it. That's the only team that's definitely down, isn't it? Osasuna, Promesas, Talavera, Orense are all potentially able to escape. Talavera will have noticed that they're playing two sides down the bottom to finish up with. So, they've got Orense followed by, I think, Cacereño in the last game of the season. So, despite a huge disappointing and controversial defeat in Tajonar last weekend, they've got a great chance of saving themselves. As we said already, Depo Guadalajara have got a chance as well, but the second game against Real Madrid Castilla could be tricky. And of course, a couple of weeks ago, we thought Real Avilés Industrial had pulled away, but they're not looking that safe now anymore, are they? Because all the teams beneath them are winning and they're not doing so. So they're being pulled back into it. So absolutely crazy, as you say, with just 2 games to go. We've still only got 1 team out of 5 relegated.
Yeah, it really is. Like I say, we've got Arantero bottom, sort of dead and buried now, but Osasuna, Promesas, Talavera, and Orense, sort of in that little mini league, Liam, which you've explained this to me before. It all comes down to sort of like the heads to head between those 3 teams. So again, a fascinating, extra nuance to Spanish football there. So again, Orense currently the better off of the 3 teams. However, it'll be interesting to see how they get on next weekend. As we mentioned, Depot occupy that final relegation spot, but are just 1 point behind Cacereño in 14th and only 3 points off Real Avilés Industrial, as you said. I did the top of Grupo Uno. Do you want to do the top of Grupo Dos? Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, you did mention that. I'd be very surprised if it doesn't make your 3 games to watch this weekend in Grupo Dos. Atletico Madrileño going to Eldense this weekend, right back in the title race after winning that game 4-3 against Sabadell. And of course, what we didn't expect to happen this weekend was for Eldense not to win at Sevilla Atletico. As Sevilla Atletico obviously relegated, we thought that was a done deal, that Eldense would go then win. And if they had done, they would have gone into that last game against, penultimate game against Atletico Madrid, knowing if they won, they would actually be up. But dropping those 2 points has thrown everything back into it. And of course, Sabadell winning means they're still in the race as well. Sabadell losing means that they're still in the race. So it's basically a 3-way battle still, but 2 of those 3 teams playing each other this weekend. And Sabadell, I think, would expect to win this weekend. So we'll wait and see how this pans out. But Eldense probably still just about favours for me, I would say, because they're playing at home and they're very good. But, Atletico Madrileño will take a strong side down, though we know that for certain. And any one of those 3 can still win it. And we know about Villarreal B and Europa, again, of course, both still in those 4th and 5th places. But because, as I said earlier, both Cartagena and Algeciras won, they're both still in with a shout of gate crashing the playoffs in with just 2 weeks to go. So fascinating stuff at the top of Grupo Dos.
Really, really is as well. Like I say, and as you get those teams that don't have anything to play for, it does enhance that as well. I think Sabadell have got Antequera this weekend, who, like I said, the minute we'll be thinking, we can go down to the Costa, we can go and get on the beach for a bit. Who knows? But we'll keep an eye on that game in Barcelona this weekend. At the bottom, there obviously is already 3 relegated sides, and they could only muster up a point between them. It went to Sevilla Atletico right down at the bottom there. But similar to Osasuna, Promesas, and Grupo Uno, Betis Deportivo really are giving themselves a shot at staying in the league, which is very, very unlikely given where they were, especially at the end of the Javi Medina reign when they were rooted to the bottom of this league and looked pretty much dead and buried well before Christmas. To go away and beat Real Murcia 2-1, despite the troubles that Real Murcia are having, is still impressive for this B time for this filial. So again, they have still given themselves a shot of climbing out of relegation zone that they've spent all season in. As we've mentioned, it wasn't such good news for Nashville de Tarragona. They were leapfrogged by Tarazona after losing 2-0 to Aragonese side, and they now occupy that final relegation spot and are 2 points behind Tarazona as well. Torremolinos are still within firing range of Nastich, but their 1-0 win over Marbella gives them a great chance of staying in the league, and they have probably done just about enough to give them a second season in the 3rd tier. And as you've mentioned before, we've all got those relegated sides already down. Sevilla Atletico Sanluqueño, and Marbella, of the latter 2, lost this weekend. So, penultimate fixtures, Liam. 2 games of the regular season to go for every side. What are your 3 to watch in Grupo Uno this weekend? Noting as well, and this is rather unusual, all kickoffs at the same time, which is not often what happens in Primera Federacion, is it?
It always happens the last 2 weeks of the season. What I'm absolutely gutted about is that it usually happens on the same day. And obviously, out of a kind invitation from Melody to go down there and see their game against Unionistas, these games have always been on a Saturday night before. And sure enough, the Grupo Uno games have been moved to the Sunday afternoon at 5 p.m, meaning I can't go to Melody. So gutted about that. But hopefully we'll get to go next season together. As we know, Melody will be with us next season. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a chance to visit Extremadura on that occasion. As I said earlier on, essentially, how on earth do you pick 3 games when every single game has something rested on it? I've eventually, after much deliberation, gone for Real Aviles Industrial against Baracaldo because one is just above the relegation zone and one is just outside the playoff picture. I've also picked Talavera Orense, which is the mother of all relegation 6-pointers from my point of view. And then also I've gone for Zamora against Cathareña because I think Zamora will still want to finish second if they possibly can. And of course, Cathareña massively buoyed by that win last weekend against Real Madrid Castilla in some amazing conditions, such bad weather there. They actually stopped the game, didn't they? It was raining so hard that they actually took everyone off the pitch for about 20 minutes. So yeah, incredible scenes there. But they did have a brilliant win, and that gives them a great chance of surviving. But they've now got to go to Zamora, who are red hot in form. So those 3 look like they'd be great games. But honestly, I could have picked any 3 of the 10. Every single game has something riding on it.
Yes, El Nino both in the air and on the sidelines running rampant in Primera Federacion this weekend. It's a very nuanced terminology if you follow my drift. Grupo Dos, all the games are kicking off at 9 o'clock on Saturday evening, which would have been great for Grupo Uno for you, Liam, but unfortunately they decided to go with Grupo Dos instead. However, I've gone for 3 absolutely huge games with potential at up and down the table is what I would say. Starting with that Eldense against Atletico Madrileño game. This is a winner-takes-all match for me. Basically, if Eldense can get the win here, they give themselves enough space to knock Atletico Madrileño out of the title race. However, if the away side win, they're very much in it, and it's a bit of a winner-takes-all dependent on that Sabadell result as well. Nasi Tarragona against Europa, a Catalan derby, which is always important. Where both sides have got something to play for as well. Nastic need a win here to stand any chance of remaining in the division. However, Europa, as you've mentioned, very aware of Algeciras and Cartagena chasing them down, will want to cement their place in the playoffs as well. So much is riding on this game. And then finally, always watch Algeciras at home, we say. The Nuevo Mirador has been an absolutely brilliant stadium for the home side this season. And they, as much as it's Hercules with nothing to play for, it is going to be a tasty game, and Algeciras will want to give themselves the best chance at home, their final home game of the season, of getting into the playoffs as well. So plenty of football to watch across both Grupos this weekend, Liam.
Yeah, it's typical, isn't it? Really, having made that commitment to try and get to Merida, it's quite a long way from Madrid, but I thought, why not? There's a game right near Malaga, Algeciras. There's a game right near Alicante, Eldense, and I'm in Madrid. So yeah, brilliant. Let's see what happens. Let's see if I decide to go for a big journey somewhere, or whether I eventually see sense and stay around the Madrid area. But yeah, I'll certainly be watching one of those games if possible, or trying to find 2 screens in which to watch 2 of them on Saturday night, and it's going to be an amazing penultimate weekend of the season.
Yes, it really will be. It really will. And like I say, 2 weekends of the football season left to go. And obviously the playoffs still to come as well. Let's not forget, still plenty of opportunity for us to get to a game coming to the end of the season as well. So stick with us here on El Podo for definitely one of the most exciting leagues happening in Spain at the moment. And I'll say thank you to you, Liam, for going down the well with me once again.
Un placer, como siempre.
Sin problem. I assume that was the right response. And thank you to you guys at home. Muchos gracias as always. We'll see you again next week as we go down El Podo. But for now, hasta luego.